We'll be right. Morning, everyone, or I guess yeah, still morning here everywhere. My name is Ben Tallman. I'm with CropX's customer experience team, and welcome to our preseason advanced session. In this particular session, we're going to be going over a lot here, and there will be time for questions at the end. So obviously, feel free to use our chat if you have any questions, and also you can reach out to support if you do. But we're going to be starting with subscription management. Then we're going to go over doing initial set points, just some notes on setting those. We'll go over just some of the basics of reading graphs and a few of the graph tools that we have. We'll cover some tools we have here to help you with recommendations to help make your life as dealers easier. We'll go over a new feature called our Farm tab. That's actually be going live in the next week or two. We'll have a navigation. We'll go over some of the navigation tips highlighting our table view. We'll go over our agenda, which is our name for the calendar. We'll cover a little bit of the disease and nutrition features, and then we'll wrap up with some information for preseason diagnostics, installations, and hardware troubleshooting. So going off our first point, subscription management dashboard. This is a tool that was new last year, so at this point, most of you have probably encountered it. But the way that you reach this is on that top right three-bar menu or the hamburger menu. You select that, and between the farm management and between the account, we have our distribution tools, and that's where the subscription tab lives. Clicking that will activate the dashboard for it. When you open your subscription management dashboard, one of the first things that you're going to see up top here is basically four types of subscriptions here. You got your first year CropX sensors, you got the CropX telemetry first year, and then we have CropX device renewals. While we separate the sensor and the telemetry as first year devices, we treat them all the same when it comes to the renewals here. And then we have third-party devices. So if you have anything like still have an AgSense box, that's where this would live here on the subscription tab. Looking here, we could see the number that we have currently active and in use, and those are in green because they have active subscriptions that are paid for. If you end up any that go past that subscription and they don't have any that are paid, they'll be here in red. And then we have a sum here of your total active units. We have a list here of those that are in inventory. Now, these currently are not listed here with a subscription because they're not active at this time. And then we have the sum of the devices of each kind and the number of credits here. So you can see here that we have all these first year subscriptions here. These are likely ones that have finished at the season and are now deactivated. And when they're activated next time, they're going to move down here as renewal devices. And you can see there's a positive credit balance here because in this example here, the user has paid for the renewals. So these units will basically move down here to in-use paid sub once they get activated that second year, and they'll be deducted from this credit balance. What we could see here on the subscription management tab, when you look at the individual units, and I blocked out some information here, so for anonymity here, we could see we have the device types here, or the device IDs here. This is the QR code, so the G or V numbers. We have different categories here, so we differentiate here what the telemetry devices are and what the soil devices are, the B4 CropX sensor. We have their current status. Now, this is their status where they'd be on the previous menu we looked at. We have their initial activation date. That is the first time that they were used or when the FTS was activated, the first time subscription. We have their current activation. So if it's the second time they've been activated, these two dates will not align. We have the last user they've been installed on or the current user they're installed on if it's an active unit. And then we also give you the farm and field name. So if you're looking at a unit, sometimes like you know the V number, you know that, hey, I've got to get a subscription on this unit, but you might not remember what farm or field it's on. Well, this way it makes it easy to associate which unit is where. We have their subscription status here. All the units are in good. That's nice to see. Now, additional information that's important here. We have the shipment date. This is the date that we logged shipping the unit to you, and we have our next renewal date on them. And again, we also list the device type. Again, this is where that device lives on that list on the previous slide, whether it's a new unit or one that's going to be a renewal unit. Now, some key points I want to highlight here. When a new order is paid, the credit is applied. So if you pay for your renewals today, we will then go ahead and apply those to your credit balance on the subscription management system. And you can track your available subscriptions, and it basically works like a token system here. Um, so if you install a new unit, then one unit is deducted from your credit balance and it's applied to that particular sensor. So when you purchase subscriptions, you don't have to associate a subscription with the unit until it deducts from your token base. Now, if you have an RMA, support will be able to ensure that the token of the RMA sensor is preserved for the replacement units. You'll see in this example, there is one, and that's what the partial credit here is. That partial credit is going to be applied to the replacement unit so that you can finish out the season and not have to deduct another token from your credit balance when you install that new unit. Another key point to mention here is that the renewal credits do not expire and can sit in your bank until the time they're needed. And another point I'd like to highlight here regarding those first year subscriptions, because we do track those separately, they hold on for a pretty long time. They don't expire until 3 years after that fulfillment date. So again, we're noting here when we list all your units there on that previous slide, you noted we had the fulfillment date. You have till 3 years from that date to activate that sensor before you burn that first year subscription. It's okay if you have an item on the shelf, don't use it the first year you get it. You still have time to go ahead and deploy that sensor and not risk losing that subscription on it. Some other key points to mention here. When you are in install season, you'll start receiving installation reports here. That's going to note the serial number of the units you installed and then indicate if it had a valid subscription or if you need to add them. If a unit is without a subscription, we give you a little bit of leeway here. We're giving you 14 days before the data stops coming through to you. So you have 14 days to go ahead and get your ducks in order here to make sure you have enough credits to cover your installations here. Obviously, we prefer you get those done before you do the installation, but we want to make sure that we know you're busy to install season. We want to give you a little bit of time here if you need it. So only devices, another note to note here is that only devices that are or have been active are shown on the list of QR. So if you just got a new unit and it's not showing up there, don't be alarmed. It will show up there eventually. And also, I think this is an important point for you. The system is built to allow you to uninstall and move a sensor if the initial install location wasn't ideal. So if you uninstall and reinstall that sensor, you're not burning additional credits for each install there. You're okay to go ahead and move a sensor, and it'll still only need that initial credit that you've applied to it for that season. Now, what happens if you get past that 14 days and you've not renewed your credits? Well, what's going to happen is you're going to have a service interruption here where it's going to become a suspended unit. Now, a suspended unit is still going to work in the background where it's still going to collect data. So no data is lost. It's still going to take readings. It's still going to transmit to you. You just won't be able to see the data while it's suspended. And once payment is made and you've made good on that subscription, all that data will be backfilled for you. So when the unit is unsuspended, you will see all the data uninterrupted because the sensor has been working in the background for you. And again, we're still going to send you emails before it's shut off. So you should receive those emails and you should be able to take care of it during that 14-day grace period before we get to this point. Moving on to our next topic here, some of the set points here, and it's important to point out that management here begins at installation. We have some screenshots here from the installation on the app. Now, last year we introduced a feature where you could go ahead and select the moisture levels. I believe we had 5 different points last year. This year, to simplify it a little bit, we've chosen 3 different points: full, optimal, and refill. Now, you always have the option by default to just let CropX decide. Let CropX decide is basically going to be how the auto set points worked 2 years ago without manual inputs, where it's basically just going to read whatever it reads and it's going to say that's the full point, and it'll just if it detects new full points after rain or irrigation events. Now, not only are we offering the manually provide option, but now we're breaking it up into 3 feet of the profile because you might have a bottom that's wet and a top that is dry. So when you're going ahead and you're augering that hole, it's a good practice to go ahead and get a feel for the auger, get an idea of how wet or dry that soil is, and you can go ahead and indicate here. Now, something I want to I think is very important to note here is if you mark full, it's going to go ahead and more or less read whatever it's reading right there and say that's the full point and set a refill point accordingly. If you think you're in the middle between full and refill, mark optimal, and it's basically going to go ahead and your initial set point is going to put you basically midway there, and it's going to set a full point above what you're reading and a refill line below it. If you think you're in refill, then it's going to plot it where it's basically going to say that your refill line is where the sensor is currently reading, and it's going to go ahead and plot a full point above there. Now, it's important, I'd say, to make sure that you really take note of your soil when you are doing this installation, because we had situations a few years ago where people were installing in drought conditions and they'd basically be treating it like a full point. That could get you into some trouble here. So if you do run into a case where you're installing in drought conditions, really make sure that you're manually putting in that information and indicating that you're in refill, because we want to make sure that we're triggering irrigation sooner in that case so you don't run into trouble and stress your crop unnecessarily. Now, talking here a little bit more about the auto set points. It takes roughly 24 to 48 hours worth of readings to have enough data to really calculate them. So when you install a sensor and you're checking your status the day after you've done the install and you see pending moisture status, don't be alarmed. Everything's working correctly. We just need more data points to calculate that initial set point. So if you see that pending moisture status, it just means the algorithm's working and it's determining those set points. And once it has enough data, it will calculate them. It's worth noting that it is pretty common early on in the season with auto set points on that you're going to probably see some adjustments early on. Example, in the screenshot, we could see that it read this here, determined that was a full point. So that if you had it marked as full or let crop X decide, this is what it would look like here. But then there was likely a rain within the next day, and we saw that our full point could be raised by not much here. It was about a tenth of an inch, but it still did impact the full and refill points. So it's very typical to see movement like that with auto set points. Now, again, take note of the soil at the time of installation and utilize the tools in there to make sure that we're giving you as accurate of set points as we can at the initial point of installation. Now, sometimes manual set points are needed. Case in point, if you're installing it in a drought situation, and you know you're at the refill point or even below the refill point, really take note of that. It is worth noting that it's possible in a season that you may never actually see your full point in the soil, especially if it's a dry year. Now, if you do need to go ahead and do a manual set point, when you're on that profile sum, you click the green set points button there, and it pops this up on the right-hand side. You simply turn off auto updating, and you input your full point as a measure of inches, and then put a percentage there of that as your refill point. And this is just an example of how a graph looked here. So this would be a case where I would say the person probably, if they did let Prop X decide or they marked full here, this is what it would look like. We could see that would not have been a good initial set point. Now, thankfully, there was a very heavy rain shortly afterwards, and the set point adjusted pretty quickly here. You could see the algorithm auto detected a new full point and adjusted the set points pretty accurately here because they maintained here even throughout the season. So again, just take note here. If you had marked full, um, and let's say you didn't get this rain, you could have run into trouble because if you'd marked full or let CropX decide, and let's say you didn't catch this rain and it was a dry season and you were remaining down at this part of the graph, you could have easily hit what actually would have been your refill point and not realized it. So be mindful of those initial entries there when you're doing an installation. And don't be afraid if you know it's dry to use a manual set point initially if you don't mark that it's dry on that pick list. Now, some graph tools I want to talk about here. The ruler and zoom tools exist and really make it easy to hone in on water events. So in this example here, you click on the top right of the profile sum graph, we have this little measure here. You can click this and then click and drag, and you can measure water usage over a specific period. So I was just measuring on a specific day here. It showed me my start time, my starting amount, and then my end time and my ending amount. So basically we measured a day here, or it's 15 hours. We measured the daylight hours of it, and we saw we had a delta or water usage here of 12 hundredths of an inch. This is great for just looking at daily water usage. And also after an irrigation or rainfall event, you can go ahead and measure how much water entered your profile there. And it's also great information to get an idea what your daily water usage is when you're doing recommendations. It can help you determine when you might want to be looking to do an irrigation or when you can wait and delay one. And also, it's worth noting the click and drag always works, just as a zoom feature. So if you are in the graph and you click and drag, it'll zoom in on everything that's within your box when you let go of the left mouse. Now, again, reading graphs here, just an example of what a graph looks like here during the season. You have that stair-stepping motion here where we see the water usage during the daylight hours. It plateaus during the nighttime and just continues onward. And we see there's been various wetting events. These are likely some light rains here, and we possibly have an irrigation here. We'd have to go ahead and look at the agenda to see if there was rainfall associated with that day. But you can just see how they've managed it here. Get a little bit of refill here, but they don't really let it stress here. They're taking pretty good action here and keeping it in the optimal zone and avoiding stress here, and also saving water here is another thing that's worth noting here. We don't ever really see them over water on this particular field. So it's just a good example of how learning to read these graphs can be a great help you get the results you're looking for, saving water and maximizing yields. Now, so moving on to our next topic here, some of the recommendations here and writing recommendations. We have a lot of tools within the CropX app to help you stay connected with your growers. So again, we have the recommendation tab that's on your overview page. We have it on the overview page and on the field page. So when you open a field, you have the option to go ahead and write new recommendations. You just simply write new, give it a subject line, and then put your information there, what you want to convey to your grower. And when you send it to your grower, they should receive a notification, and they'll have the option to go ahead and comment on it if they have a question, or they can even go ahead and just do a like. And you also have the option to click history here and view the history of all the recommendations you've given on that field if you're on the field tab. And if you're on the overall recommendation tab of the overview page, you can just look at your recommendation history for all the fields. Something I like doing here, and we'll talk about this more on the navigation tricks, is just right-clicking a bunch of fields. So you can just open them up in different tabs and move from field to field and writing recommendations. And I will also point out that if you have anyone on a cost share program, these recommendations will publish on the report generated at the end of the season. So NRCS can see those. Or if you don't have a cost share program, you can still use them just to show your client what you've done for them during the season. Things that can make your recommendations easier, the CropX Insights. I can't speak to this enough, how great of a tool this is. It basically is there as a cheat sheet for writing your recommendations. It gives you a lot of information here to determine what information might be worth including in the recommendation, and can just help you save time, especially if you're a large dealer and you've got a lot of fields to handle. You can go ahead and really save time with this. I highlighted this here on the field setup, the irrigation tab, because the way you turn on these PropX Insights is you have to go ahead and put in the irrigation information. I'd say that these insights are so important that if you don't have the proper irrigation information, I would just guesstimate and put something there that makes sense, because I'd say it's more important to turn on this tool to save you time as a dealer and get this information than it is to have the pivot information be 100% accurate. Now, if someone's using the VRI tool, in that case, you do need to make sure your information is accurate, because if you don't have this information accurate, your prescriptions won't be accurate. But if you aren't using those prescriptions, then feel free to guesstimate here and you'll be okay. And really, our goal with tools like this is to just help you save time as a dealer. And the great thing is, Pivot information generally is to be same year over year. So you just have to put this in once, and next time you go to install in that field, the information is already there, and you'll have the insights year after year. Now, important notes here on the recommendations. We want to make sure that you get the most out of them with notifications. We want to encourage your growers to go ahead and turn them on. Now, we can't turn them on for the grower. The grower's going to have to turn it on, and there's a two-factor verification there to make sure the grower's the one turning it on. But encourage them to go into their account settings, and under account settings, there's notifications. They can go ahead and they can add an email, or they can go ahead and add a mobile number. So they can get an email or a text notification when there is a new recommendation or if there's other notification triggering events. Now, something we have here on the same tab where we have our set points. So this is where we edit our set points here. So if you're on that profile sum or the root zone sum and you've edited set points, well, we have a tab here you can click here called Get a Notification. And you can actually put in an alarm level at a certain inch point for full or refill, and it could trigger a notification. So even before the refill point, you could set this ahead there. Maybe let's say a few tenths of an inch before your refill point, you could set it here to receive a notification. And that can help trigger when to write a recommendation and help trigger when you might want to think about doing an irrigation here so that you could stay ahead of the curve before you get into refill. This is a very valuable tool, and I just want to make sure everyone knows it's there so that they can go ahead and utilize this. Now, talking about some of the navigation tools. We have some search bars and filters. Something I really love highlighting on the top bar when you're on the CropX app is the Find Anything search. This is great, and usually by the time you get to your third character, it should start popping up what you're looking for here. So it's very easy, whether you're putting in a V number, a farm name, a field name, you should very quickly be able to find what you're looking for here. And that from that drop down menu, you can just click what you want when it starts showing in there, and it'll take you right to the field, sensor, or farm that you're trying to get to. We also have when you're on, whether it's the card view or the table view or any of our views, on the left-hand side, we have filters. These are great to use, and you can go ahead and just filter by a farmer, a grower, or a moisture status and just highlight whatever you're looking for. So again, utilizing these tools is great, and we'll get further to another navigation tool shortly, our table view, but I want to get to something else first. And that is going to be our farm tab. Now, this is a new feature that's going to be coming out within the next, it's going to be out sometime in April. They did tell me that. I don't have the exact date yet, but this is great, and it's going to live up here. So we've always had the overview, fields, and sensors. Well, what's going to be popping up there soon is farms in between here. And when you're in farms, it's basically giving us new cards here, where every farm under your account is showing up as a card here. And these are all clickable. What happens when we click them? Well, it takes us to this. And basically, when a farm's selected, it's working like a mini overview page. This is very similar to what we have on the overview page for all of your fields and farms, but this is just highlighting all the fields within one farm. So this is just a neat way if you want to highlight a farm, if you're having a grower meeting, if you're having a meeting with a grower, or you're writing recommendations for a specific grower, this is a way to just highlight with that individual and see all the fields under there. And basically, you treat this like an overview page, except very hyper focused on that individual farm that you want to be looking at that particular time. Just an easier way to go ahead and manage a larger operation if you have one. Now I want to highlight our table view here. So here's how we get to our table view. So if we go ahead and in this example, we're going to go ahead and click fields. This is already in table view. You can see up here on this top right, we can go between the card view, which is the default, and we can select the table view here. And then we have that left-hand pane I was talking about there, where we can go ahead and filter for different statuses. And likewise, these are all fields that you can go ahead and you could sort by. So if you want to look at the specific grower or just look at one farm on this table view, you can go ahead and do that by using that left-hand navigation pane there. Go ahead and deselect that if you want to look at everything again. But really, this is just another way to make your time more efficient by grouping everything in multiple ways for however you want to run your operation. Now, just going to bring you to this next slide here. Again, this top right here, card view is the default view, but if you want to go to the table view, this is where you'd find it when you're in the Fields tab. Um, I like it, especially for recommendations. And let me just give you a screenshot here of an update we've made to this table view. I want to highlight something here, and this is something that was not in here last year. I want to bring this to your attention here. If you could see between the moisture status bar and the sensor ID, we have days to refill. This is something we added late last season. It was August or September, so a lot of people didn't see it. But this is very important. What we're doing with the days to refill is we're looking at your current moisture status on whether it's your profile sum or your root zone sum, whichever you're managing off of, and we're looking ahead for the next week. How much rain is expected to fall there, and how much water do we expect that crop to use? And we're basically telling you, based on that calculation, how many days away you are from refill. And the great thing is this is a filterable box. So if you're going to ahead and writing recommendations, filter this here. Look at your ones that are closest to refill first, and you can just go ahead and right click all of these, open them up in a new tab, and go ahead and write your recommendations and make sure that they're brought to the attention of your customer so that you can go ahead and take care of those first. This is a feature that was asked for by a lot of dealers, and I think it'll really help you in terms of the managing water this particular year and scheduling irrigations. Now I just want to show you our agenda or calendar, and here's just a video of how you access it. On the left-hand pane under tasks, we have our agenda. And when we pop that open, we could see a bunch of different things noted here. If we made a recommendation, we installed a sensor, noted irrigations, spraying events, fertilization, and any rainfall that has fallen or is forecasted, it's all plotted here. If we want to add a task, we click New, choose Task. In this case, we're doing an irrigation, and we'll just put in that we irrigated a certain amount, save the record, and it plots it there on our agenda. Nice thing here is anything we put on this particular agenda, it gets placed on the end of season reports. So again, it will note the irrigations you've applied, any particular spraying events, recommendations, date of sensor install, everything gets plotted on here. So it's just a great way to manage what you've done on a farm and keep track of it that year. And again, up here, this green new tab, clicking that is how you would manually add any task that you have done. The rainfalls are plotted manually because we have DT, or I mean automatically, I should say. Those come in from DTN, which is our third-party weather service. Of course, if you do have a rain gauge or weather station on your field, that's an override DTN, and it'll log those rainfalls over DTN, but we'll still use DTN for the forecasting tool. So we'll be looking out here at future rainfalls. We'll still use that from DTN, but any pest events rather than weather service, it'll be plotted from your device you have on the field if applicable. Next thing I want to talk about is our disease feature here. Now, the disease feature is going to use weather data and sensor data to establish risk levels here. It's important to go ahead and make sure that if you are using the disease insight tool, that you've gone ahead and updated your crop information. We track multiple diseases per crop, and we're always looking to add new crops and diseases that are requested. So if you see something that's not supported that you think we should have modeled for you, let us know, and our data science team will work to see if it's possible for us to add a disease or crop to this particular feature. This has been validated by over 2 decades of usage from DOCOM, and now the last couple of years it's been used in North America. And I'm just going to say, from a dealer told me during one of our postseason calls we had this year that this was the first year he used this tool. And the feedback I had was that this was so predictive that they were getting alerts for possible disease risk a week ahead before their own in-field scouting would notice it. So they found this tool to be very helpful. Um, Now I'm going to add in here, the weather data is important here because it helps us know when spraying conditions are ripe, but also that weather data is important because that's one of the ways we know leaf wetness, which is a key indicator of disease risk. We track the daily changes in the risk and also give you a look back there. And I'll show on the next slide how we do that. So you can see how risk is evolved through the season. And again, the tool can be predictive and allow you to take action before you see any stress on your crop. So let's just play how this feature works. So again, it's the left-hand pane under agronomy. We got the disease tab there. We'll go ahead and click that. We can go ahead and in this example, we've got potatoes. We'll look at the diseases we're tracking. There's three of them. We can pop this open for any of them here and get a graph here. And we're looking ahead at the expected rainfall here for the next few days. It's indicating that there will be a slight increase of risk, but we're not getting into the point where we're immediately in need of action. We'll want to monitor this and see if that rainfall ends up being heavier than expected, because it could potentially put us into a disease risk category, but we aren't there yet. And also we can look at the week's weather forecast to see when it might be best to go ahead and spray if we need to. And we have the option here to add a spraying task. Clicking the spraying task here will basically do the same thing here that adding it on the calendar will do. And it's also worth noting that when we indicate we've sprayed, it'll go ahead and reset the risk there. So that input's important if you spray, because the only way we know that the risk is gone back to zero, other than environmental factors, is if you've indicated that you've sprayed. So go ahead and let us know if you've done that. It's important for tracking that information. The next feature I want to talk about here is the nutrition feature here. And again, we're looking at the EC saturated paste from the sensor's EC readings. Now, we've always been tracking the EC readings, but now we're giving you some more insights and more information from that these last few years. This will give you an idea of your soil salinity and the nutrient load within that salinity there of your profile. Doing this manually would be a very time-consuming and laborious process. So really, we're giving you a lot of information here that often would have required you going out to the field. We validated this in a previous years, but after last year's full deployment, we really saw that this feature proved to be very valuable and was very definitely lived up to the expectations here. Now, something I want to mention here that's important is right now this nutrition feature only works with the CropX probe. If you have a Centec device, it will not work with that, but it will work with the CropX probe. Now you can go ahead and use the agenda as I've showed previously and log your fertilization applications. And that could be important because sometimes you do have to actually keep track of this based on local regulations. There's some jurisdictions where you do have to note when you have applied it, so you can use CropX as your logger for that information. And again, we actually now on our seasonal reports have a nutrition report in addition to the irrigation report, so these events can be logged into that report for you. Now, just a quick video of how this works. So again, it's the left-hand navigation pane. We'll go ahead and open our field, choose the sensor we want to look at here, and we'll see our EC paste there for that particular day. We can have a calendar here, which will mark leaching events in the last 30 days. You can always zoom back there and look to see if there were leaching events prior. We have the show leaching features where we can look at our EC average value against the basically how much moisture was in the soil at that time, what our water deficit was. And we have a salinity monitor where we get a daily average here of all three levels that we're measuring here. And we can go to a full season view, custom date view, last 30 days or last 7 days. And you can always turn off different sensors and just look at one level at a time if you'd like there. Again, we have the fertilization task here where you can go ahead and note what you've applied if you want to. And again, that plots on the agenda. Now, something I want to point out here while we are on this particular topic is we always have the EC graphs, which are reading every 30 minutes, just as the soil moisture is. But this lets us go ahead and sort of take the noise out of the every 30-minute readings and look at that daily average. And that can be very helpful in looking to establish trends here and see what action might be needed. Our next topic here is the preseason diagnostic. Now, there's a few things I want to talk about. You're going to want to do this preseason diagnostic probably in the next couple of weeks, but something I want you to do right now as an action item that I think would be very helpful is make sure your batteries are charged now. And let's go ahead and get those batteries in the units and attach the antennas now. The reason I'm telling you to do that now before we even do the preseason diagnostic is let's just allow those modems to wake up. When we do this, those modems are going to check in a hibernation node about twice per day, and this will allow them to wake up, reestablish themselves with either the Verizon or AT&T or T-Mobile network, whichever network they need to be on, and also to allow them to go ahead and take care of any firmware updates that may need to be taken care of from the long winter. So let's just go ahead and connect our sensor, get our sensors woken up now. You don't have to do the preseason diagnostic now, but just putting the batteries in and plugging in those antennas, get that done now. And let's just demonstrate how the preseason diagnostic actually works here. So we go into more here on the bottom right here. We'll go to sensor tools, choose pre-installation, scan the QR code of our sensor. And at this point, our phone's going to use Bluetooth to go ahead and send a signal to the sensor. And it's just going to check the transmission, the ability to take readings, and check the battery and give us some information here. And this is running in lot. Basically, you can see how quickly it did it. And right here, it's going to check the transmission, but pretty quickly you'll get a notification that it was successful. So to very quick process, do the pre-install diagnostics. So go ahead, wake up your sensors, and then after you've done that for a few days, let's run pre-install diagnostics. I think it'll really help you when it comes to installation time if we have those modems already woken up and we've already troubleshot anything that needs to be troubleshot. Now, going into installation, reharping on something I mentioned earlier, again, information we make during the step can really help us with those initial set points. Um, if you have an offset, mark your offset during the installation step because we can't go back and do that remotely. We have to uninstall and reinstall a sensor in the app in order to add an offset. And afterwards, I'll talk about on a next slide about some new tools we have that'll help you with the installation. But let's just first run just what it looks like in the app when we do the actual installation. So use the plus, choose sensor. We have every list of devices listed here, but we'll just use the CropX sensor in this example. We'll search for our field we're installing in, confirm our GPS location, scan QR code. And before we click submit, let's go ahead and look here. This is where it lives to go ahead and check the current soil moisture. So if you're going to do something other than let CropX decide, this is where you're going to do it. So do that before you click submit. And this is also where the offsets are. If you're doing an offset, choose your offset now. Once you've done those two steps, you can go ahead and click submit. And once you submit, your phone's Bluetooth is going to go ahead and speak to the sensor. It's going to tell it to take the first reading, check the battery, and transmit. So basically, we're doing all the checks right here. I'm running this one here, and this is how long it took to do. So it's a pretty quick process. You can see it does not take long to do this. I think this video from me starting it to the point we reach the end is, I believe, 80 seconds. And this is what you would have received, but I want to show you on a next slide here what we're going to receive going forward. And this is important for the installation check. This is the screen it would have ended on last year. This is where we're going to end up this year. And this will be live for installs this season. It's going to give you this while it's checking the transmission here and validating the connection. But we want two things we can do here to help you. While you're doing that, if you haven't updated your irrigation information, go ahead and do that now. Put in that irrigation information while this is working in the background so we get those CropX insights. And if you haven't updated your crop information, do that as well. Turn on the disease feature, improve your algorithms here. So go ahead and activate that at the time. And then when it's done, we're getting your initial readings. Now, these initial readings are extremely important because we want to go ahead. We've felt the soil when we were taking that, when we were checking the auger as we were going ahead and getting the hole in there so we know how wet or dry that soil is. Go ahead and just gut check these numbers. Make sure they're what you would expect at each step based upon the soil conditions. If you see something that looks way off, so let's say you're installing a CropX sensor, you go 20, 5, and 30, that 5 in the middle is probably not right. That tells me there might be an issue with soil contact there, so it might be a good idea to go ahead and reinstall that particular sensor. So this is just a way to validate your soil contact to make sure that you have a very good installation. And also at this point, we're giving you instant feedback on battery health, transmission, signal strength, and just making sure that you've gone ahead and done everything you need to so that you don't have to go back to that sensor until, hopefully until it's time for extraction. Now, important notes here on another tool coming soon for troubleshooting. This is going to be a self-guided DIY troubleshooting tool that's going to go ahead and help you diagnose a lot of issues that you could fix in the tool. This is going to run through the most common scenarios. So in this example here, you have to be near the sensor because we are going to use your phone's Bluetooth here to give it commands here. So you go ahead, it's testing the Bluetooth, it's testing the sensor board, testing the battery, testing the SIM, it's testing everything here. And it's also giving us the most recent transmission and readings here. And in this example here, it's telling us it was likely lower RSI, which could mean that, or antenna damage. So in this case, you check the antenna, make sure it is completely healthy, hasn't been chewed on, and you'd make sure that it's as high as it can be and has good signal strength there. So what do you do next after you've done this? Well, we have what we always call it our troubleshooting tool or run diagnostics, and that's going to validate your fix here for you. So once you believe you have this issue solved, go ahead and do this. So let's say in this example, we're going to go ahead, we're going to choose our sensor here. So in this example, you could just use that three-dot menu, or you can go to the field here. So just showing that there's more than one place to access this particular tool. So you can go ahead and search for the sensor as well. And once you're there on the field page, we can go ahead and we have another three-dot menu there, and we can go ahead, use those sensor tools there. And from the sensor tools, which we're going to show here, we can choose Run Diagnostic. And Run Diagnostic is going to do pretty much like what we did on the installation. Our phone's Bluetooth's going to tell it to take a reading, check the battery, and check the transmission. And we're going to go ahead and get results here. So going on to our next slide, you'd receive also this notification here that basically everything worked here. It gave us this message here after the end of the troubleshooting here. So we know that the issue's been fixed. So again, running the diagnostics is an important tool there to go ahead and after you've done the troubleshooting, do that before you leave the field, just so you know that your issue has fixed it successfully. Now, this is another tool coming through that's going to help make life a lot easier. And this is View Sensor Transmission History. And that's going to live here in the same area where we have the sensor tools. Or when you're on that sensor, that three-dot menu there for that particular sensor, viewing the sensor history, and it'll look a lot like this. And this is going to show us what the most recent transmissions were. And this is a really great tool because this allows us to validate things like the SDI-12 connections. Because if the last reading and last transmission are running concurrently, that's a good sign. That tells us that the SDI-12 connection, so for a Centec device or any device like that, we know that those are connected well. This works kind of like how the on some people who used on back in the day, there was a tool called Wagnet that had an AT setup that no longer works. This basically works like that. That had gone away, but now we're basically giving something that works like that within the CropX app. So you can very easily diagnose a unit and get it taken care of and just make sure everything is running as you'd expect. And we can also, again, check battery and signal strength here as well. Just a really great tool for diagnosing and making sure that everything is working as you'd expect it to. With that, we'll go into questions, and it looks like there's some in the chat here. So let me just go pop that open here, see what we have. Okay, I think Nick answered some of them, but I'll just read them aloud here because I think it's important in case someone else had these questions. Does the insight information calculate the time to complete a full circle when giving details about water for the next week? So the insight is looking at the conditions of the soil sensor, and the irrigation planner that is being planned actually is going to probably help with that. But really, those insights are just telling us the conditions at the point where the sensor is installed at that point. Um, so then there's just some additional questions here about the irrigation planner and just what it's going to contain when that does go live. Do we have any other questions here? Want to make sure if that we can get those answered for you if you do have them. And of course, take note here. If you haven't added our support line to your phone, please add us as a contact in your phone. If you're out in the field and you have a question and it's we don't want you fumbling for our number, just have it saved to your phone as a contact. Um, Again, we have our knowledge base here. We have a new tool called the CropX Communities, which dealers can go ahead and you can go ahead and sign up for. We're going to have videos such as this particular webinar that have been recorded will be added there. It's a place to ask questions for other members of the CropX dealer community. So people who are dealing with the same things you are can go ahead and ask questions because someone will probably have the answer or dealt with a similar situation as you. And basically just a good area just to brainstorm. We have a lot of great minds in this community. And I think it's great to encourage interaction amongst everyone here. There are no other questions. I thank everyone for your time. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us today. And we will, for those who weren't able to make the session, we're running the same session on April 1st. So if you join late and want to watch the whole thing, we will have it then. Or if you have other colleagues who you want to view this who haven't, encourage them to sign up and join the April 1st. It's just to be a repeat of the same material here. Thank you very much.